Hello, everyone. My name is Peggy McCowan. I'm the Associate Producing Director of CATF, and welcome to Takeout and Talk, a similar kind of program to some of the work that we do during the summer, but a slightly different version of it for our online guests. So before we go any further, I just want to introduce the gentleman that will be leading our conversation tonight, as he has led the Contemporary American Theater Festival for more than 30 years now. Our founder and producing director, Ed Herendeen, is with us, and we'll hear more from him in just a few minutes. So tonight is really just a conversation. We hope that while you're enjoying this conversation that you might have a little something to eat. One of the things we're hoping to do at CATF is help support and promote our local businesses and restaurants, hence the takeout part. And all of the staff that are with us today have takeout that they're going to share a little information about. And I will start because my takeout is the carb dream of meat sauce and spaghetti from King's Pizza. I'm trying really hard to stay away from carbs, but I am indulging tonight with you. And also, I'm joining that with a little glass of beer that is in my great-grandmother's beer glasses from her old world traditional beer garden. So it's always fun to break these out for a little bit of beer. So that's what I'm having. How about you, Nicole? What are you having for dinner tonight?
You know, similar to last week, I stuck with my old faithful. I adore Kome. So today I've got my favorite rolls. I've got a rainbow roll from there and the Shepherdstown roll.
What is the Shepherdstown roll? What's in that?
You know, I'm not sure. I usually just get it because it says Shepherdstown in it.
Okay, those of you that might go to Kome, you'll have to see if you can find out what's in the Shepherdstown roll. Trent, what are you having? Trent is our production manager.
Similar to Nicole, I have a Shepherdstown roll, which I can tell you has cream cheese in it. And I also have a spicy tuna.
Oh, very good. Very good. Now, do you both use chopsticks? How do you eat your rolls?
I use chopsticks very poorly.
You know, just pick it up with your fingers and pop it in.
It depends on how hungry I am. There's definitely the days where I've got the sushi in the car, but tonight, since we're a little bit more settled, totally went for chopsticks tonight.
Okay. All right. And Miss Gabby is our public relations manager. What are you eating tonight?
I got a Mechlin burger, the Beyond Burger from the Mech, and I tried to wait for you all to eat it, but as soon as I took one bite, I just ate the whole thing. I couldn't resist.
Okay, well, that's good because a lot of people don't know that there's actually a kitchen at the Mech and that they actually serve food. So that's great for pointing that out tonight. And Ed, do you have, oh yeah, Gabby, were you going to
say, the Mech has the best burgers in town. So if you're ever hankering for a burger, the Mech's the place to go.
Very true.
And
very true.
How's the Beyond Burger? Is the Beyond Burger good?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's good. I've never tried it. Okay, good.
Good. And Ed, what do you have?
Mine is being delivered. I'm ordering my standby for this summer. You know, these meetings that we're having. I'm ordering a burrito bowl because it's got everything I like, with the heavy on the veggies, light on the sour cream, heavy on the guacamole, and light on the rice. So it's just the opposite. I'm staying light on the carbs. So Peggy, you're eating carbs tonight. Is that what that is?
I am eating carbs tonight, but I have been really trying not to.
There's nothing wrong with carbs, so that's great. And beer and carbs. I mean, you're doing 100% carbs. Way to go.
I'm here to party.
Because I find it hard to be able to eat in front of you. Mine's going to come and I'll eat it as soon as this is over. Okay, but it's going to be en route. Okay, from Maria's Taqueritas. Okay.
Good. Well, that's good.
That's great. Well, those are good meals. You're making me hungry now. That's great.
And for those of you that are joining us, we hope that you're having some delicious meal right now too. And if not, we look forward to having you in Shepherdstown again soon for CATF and other events, and that you'll visit these local restaurants. So one of the things we're doing in addition to eating is having a conversation with one of the artists from CATF and just enjoying dinner conversation, to talk about art, to talk about the world, to talk about life, to have some fun. And during this conversation, we invite you to offer questions and comments as well. You can do that by putting them in the question and answer section, or you can put them in the chat, and the other CATF folks that are here will help us keep track of that, so we make sure we address any comments or questions that come up. And in this conversation, the really fun part of it is Ed Herendeen, remember, founder and producing director of the festival, person in charge, doesn't know who the guest is. And so we have some envelopes that we provide him with, and one of them has some clues, and we hope you will join us in trying to guess who our special person is that we're having dinner with tonight, and help Ed in case he needs a little help getting to the answer. And if we can't figure it out, then it'll be a great surprise to us all. So I think at this point, we're ready to turn it over to you, Ed, to start looking at those clues and figuring out who our guest is.
Great. Thank you, Peggy. And I like how you describe it as a conversation. You know, it grew out of many years ago when we did it with breakfast. And some of my favorite memories are the kind of freewheeling conversations we used to have. And then we did it at lunchtime. And now this is the first time we're doing it virtually, which is equally as exciting. But what I like, especially about what you're saying and how we introduced everybody having a meal, this has really been a special summer in the sense that we want to come back, and we're dipping our toe in the water, and we're slowly coming back. We've had 3 really great Fridays, and anybody in the audience that has experienced the live street parties that we did with music, and the extraordinary first audio drama ever in CAT's history was last Friday's Sheepdog. So it's just been great to see 200 people in one location by the CCA, to see people coming out from the community, and especially how many people are ordering meals and supporting Shepherdstown through this long 15-month hiatus that we've all been on, to really welcome people back and to really support the businesses. So we're looking forward to seeing you next year, when we can all be in person and in the theater to see Six Plays. So that's my sort of introduction.
That's great. And while, since you brought that up, I'll just follow up by saying, if you weren't able to join us last Friday for the audio release of Sheepdog, it is available with Broadway on Demand. And The House of the Negro Insane will be released this Friday on the 30th. And again, if you can't join us then, you can also get that with Broadway on Demand. And both of those will be available for about 4 to 6 weeks. And Gabby has just dropped the link to Broadway on Demand into the chat so that you can do that. And then we also have a series of podcasts that support those audio dramas that have additional conversations with the playwrights, the directors, the characters and / actors, one of the sound designers, and a composer. And so those podcasts are CATF Unmuted Pod, available on any of your major podcast streaming platforms. So we encourage you to check out everything that's online. And again, Gabby is like on it. It's in your chat. So as you continue listening to our conversation, you can also check out those things online. Okay, without further ado,
really makes it really touches my heart that we're so committed to literature and to discussion and to provocative work, that we're doing this virtually, and it's so great that it's classic contemporary American Theater Festival, where we create a forum for this kind of work to happen. So it's great. So I encourage everybody to do just what Peggy said. And thanks, Gabby, for dropping it in there. So are you now prompting me?
I'm ready. Yes,
okay.
Let's go.
So I have not opened this. This is my clues. Okay. And Gabby said they're harder this week. So they were involved with a rolling world premiere. That could, and it said they, okay. One of their plays has been translated into 9 languages.
Ooh.
Oh, I know. And one of their works, The Knock, is being produced by the Glimmer Glass Festival. So it's either Deborah Bavort, okay, is what I'm thinking of. But The Knock doesn't ring a bell to me.
Okay, why do those clues lead you to Deborah Bavort? Why do you think that?
Well, rolling world premiere.
I know, but we've had a lot of those, right?
Yeah, and one of their plays into 9 languages. Is this Einstein?
That's an interesting guess.
Okay.
Who are you talking about? Our audience may not know who Einstein, but they know who Einstein, but who you're really referring to.
Well, let's see. That's my best guess. Should I open the envelope?
So Deborah Bavort is your guess, and you're sticking with that. That's your final answer.
Yeah, let's stick with that for now. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Ready? I'm going to open this up.
Okay.
Well, good. I'm glad I stuck. Go with your first guess, and and I even learned something that her play has been translated into 9 languages. If I didn't know that, I apologize for that. But yeah, and we're very excited when we bring her in the room. My Lord, What a Night is going to be in Washington, so we have a lot we can talk about with this fabulous playwright and this fabulous experience that we had in Shepherdstown working together. So now what happens?
So let's bring Deborah in. Deborah, welcome to the conversation. I see her little box coming. There she is. There she is.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi. Hey. And you've been in Florida doing My Lord, What a Night, huh?
Yes, I just got back from there, and boy, I'm impressed. You got it in the first try. I'm curious, what were the other clues?
Well, it was the main thing was the Rolling World premiere, and then I knew it was a playwright, and then the fact that you have your plays produced all around, it just was I think a logical guess. And you're hot right now, so I'm glad that my staff wants to bring a hot playwright into the room, sizzling hot, with productions which I can't wait to hear about in Florida, and then upcoming in DC real soon at Ford's Theater, right?
Right. Yeah.
So hey, Ed, before we jump any further with Deborah, I just want to ask our participants, if you saw My Lord, What a Night here at CATF about the friendship between Einstein and Marian Anderson, if you want to just drop something into the chat or let us know, because we're kind of curious if we have audience members that are familiar with the play. Yes, it was great, someone is saying. Absolutely. Saw it opening night.
Yay.
Yeah, great. So we have lots of people that are familiar with your work, Deborah, so that's exciting. And for those of you that didn't, if somebody saw it twice, for those of you that have not seen it, we're going to give you some information about an opportunity to see it coming soon in Washington, D.C. That's great. So Ed, go ahead.
Well, and it's really important, Deborah, and I know we've probably told you this, but it is our #1 best-selling play in the Contemporary American Theater Festival history. And that touches my heart to do serious work like this, and to have that be at the top of the list of if you want to measure success by box office, which we never do, but if we are going to measure some kind of box office success, to have it be a play that's such an important and serious work and a historical period piece. It just delights me to no end to know that you now hold that position. So,
well, it delights me as well, and it warmed my heart as well. I've got no problem with box office success.
Yeah, nor should we ever. But it really, yeah. And so I can't wait to hear you. Was Florida the next production after us that you just completed?
Well, actually, after you, it went to Orlando Shakes.
And this is pre-pandemic still, right?
Well, interesting story. We were in rehearsals and we had just finished the final dress rehearsal. And that night we're going into previews for the first audience. And they came into the theater and they said, actors, hang up your clothes. Everybody leave the theater. It's closed. Sorry, Deb, see you later. Get on a plane. You got to go home. And so, I mean, it was basically the actors hung up their clothes and we left the theater and they turned the audience away that day. It was the day that Florida or everything closed down. So, so I mean, you know, that, and everybody has this story. It was, you know, really disappointing. But it was what it was. And then Orlando Shakes then got everybody back together in February, and they did a staging of it that they then filmed, and then they did a Zoom production of it. And I was actually able, because it was almost a year later that happened, I was able to do revisions. So they were able to do revisions that I made. And they streamed it for 2 weeks, maybe, to those season ticket holders. And then it's running right now in Sarasota, because the next stop on the Rolling World premiere was Florida Studio Theater. And this was the first play to resume Rolling World premieres for NNPN. So Nan Barnett came, and so, you know, it's a big thing for NNPN. It was, we're back. And it's playing now at Florida Studio Theater in a lovely production. And I don't know the box office stats, except that it's selling very well there as well. And people are really responding to it. So anyway, so that's where we are. And I start rehearsals like in 2 weeks for Ford. So
great.
Yeah. And
you're all cast for Ford's Theater? They've got a cast? And
yes, they apparently they have a company of actors that they work with. So they've cast out of that company. And you know, during the pandemic, we did readings, a couple of readings. So I was able to continue work on it, even though everything was shut down. So
and
anyway,
are you going to go down to DC? Will you be going down there soon?
Oh, yeah.
For
we have to do the first week of rehearsal will be virtual. So we're going to do all the table work on Zoom. And then beginning on September 7th, we meet. It goes into previews October 1st, opens October 6th, runs through the 24th. So I will be going back and forth, and I will be there for a good chunk of time. So
that's great. And I know our development director, Vicki Willman, is trying to arrange a bus trip from Shepherdstown for your loyal following here to go see it at Ford's. So you will see some friendly Shepherdstown faces, maybe, if you're still there when they come to that. So
that'd be great. I'd love to.
Do you have just to tell our audience any insights as to what changes or experiences that the Florida productions and now the upcoming DC production following the premiere at CATF, were there anything that you would share with us without giving anything away, that maybe you were inspired by these live productions that you changed with the script, or were they just little tweaks?
No, actually, I did a serious rewrite. I wrote a brand new Act 2.
That's great.
And so, and you know, what's sort of the genius behind this idea of the Rolling World premiere is, and for those of you who don't know how it works, you get a minimum of 3 theaters, and in every theater you have a different team. You're not allowed to have the same director, the same actors. And so while that can be a recipe for disaster, it wasn't at all. In fact, what happened was that I got 3 different takes and perspectives on the play, and then enter Ford's Theater, based upon the CATF production, basically optioned the play within weeks of seeing it at CATF.
Yeah, I remember when they came. Yeah, I remember when they were in the audience, and I think you might have already left at that point, but we were very well aware that they were there that night.
Yeah, and they contacted me and they brought me to DC. And then, so while I was working on these other 2 productions in Florida, I was also working with them. And, like that could have been crazy, but it actually wasn't. It was really helpful to get all these insights. And then in each incarnation to see, I would make changes and see them implemented. And right up until maybe 10 days or 2 weeks ago, when I was down in Florida, I went in and I thought, I think I'm done. And I looked at it and I said, oh, I'm not done.
Oh,
So
no.
but fortunately, what I had to do was a cut. And I made a cut and I passionately put it into the show. And so basically, I guess, the change that I made was the realization that I arrived at after many conversations with 4 different theaters and 4 different productions, is that it had to do with the question of stakes. That Act 1, where Marion is kicked out of the hotel, obviously is a high stakes personal situation with personal consequences, but that the stakes needed to be rethought for Act 2, so that because it's no longer a personal thing, the stakes are now not just national, but they're global. That these 2 people are not only carrying, the burden and the risk of losing their careers, but of making a decision that would have national and ultimately global consequences with the atom bomb and with the ultimate launch of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And so that, sort of like if Act 1 is a pressure cooker, Act 2 is like a nuclear pressure cooker.
Yes,
And so what I did was I just streamlined it more, and I just really built the tension until it pops into something really large. And it involved, I don't know if this is of interest, cut me off if I'm talking too much.
Well, I'm interested, and hopefully the audience is too. So,
I mean, that the issue that we struggled with in rehearsal, Ed, was the fact that Marian Anderson was so diplomatic and so polite and so reserved and avoided conflict at all, at all costs. And this made her exceedingly difficult to dramatize. And somebody said to me, I forget who, she's got to take the gloves off. Let her take the gloves off. And so I knew she had to take the gloves off, but like, how do you make a lady who is so diplomatic and refined? I jumped back into the research. I could find nothing that indicated that she ever let that mask drop, that she ever took the gloves off, but I had to take the gloves off.
That's
And
great. I'm so glad to hear that, because I know you struggled with the historical research goes against that, and you wanted to, and you were so pure in wanting to present her, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, in wanting to present her historically accurately, the way her personality was, the way she dealt with stuff. But dramatically, it sounds like you needed the license to be creative there.
Yeah, and so that's what I did. I took the gloves off, and I don't know if you all are aware, but a biography of Mary Church Terrell was published just in the last few months. This was a resource that I did not have when I was writing the play. So Mary Church Terrell finally got her biography, long overdue and much deserved. And I found a quote from her, which said that she engaged in dignified agitation.
Oh.
And I thought, I love that. And so that sort of became, I'm like, okay, Marion she could take the gloves off in a dignified way, but the gloves are coming off,
Way to go. Oh man, that must have been so, as a writer, freeing for you to have that freedom to explore that side of an invented character in that sense.
Yeah.
Good for you. And I'm going to assume that the audience really responded to that.
Oh yeah, they really do. Yes. I don't know what the response was in Orlando because everybody was on Zoom. Yeah. It got good reviews in the press, but in Florida, no, people were the audience was quiet, listening. They were very responsive. I had really good actors, so the humor was there. And standing ovations every night, which apparently they don't have at Florida Studio Theater. They have an older audience who doesn't stand up. And every night they're having full standing ovations. So it's
which was true in Shepherdstown too. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll ask you one more question with that, with the audiences responding to that, and also what about, a lot has happened, Deborah, since we did the play, sadly, in our country, COVID just being the first, but of course, everything that happened, George Floyd, and
Yep.
do you think that has also impacted how the audience is coming to this play now, were we to do it again at CATF? Are you seeing that our present current events are informing the audience in another way to listen in a way that they might not have listened before? Or
I think that's right on. I think that's exactly what's happening. It has certainly been pointed out by every critic, and it's been pointed out in every article that has been written about it. And Florida Studio Theater every day sends me a list of overheard comments in the lobby. And that is a comment that I get a lot. Oh, it's so timely. How this play is, it feels like just like today. But it seems to me that in a funny way, as much as awful as the pandemic was, and I hated to see it delayed, in a way it positions the play in a very unique way to speak to the current moment. And I think it is speaking to the current moment in a stronger way than it would have been even a year ago because of what's happened.
right.
And if there is now a clamoring for the script from theater companies and people, which tells me that because you remember we had a hard time getting this Rolling World premiere put together.
Yeah.
A lot of folks were like,
Yeah.
oh no, we don't want to do this historical drama, and now everybody wants to do it, right? So that tells me that it's speaking to the moment. I mean, I know, as you and I discussed many times in rehearsal, my whole goal with this play was to make it super authentic and accurate to 1937, because I felt that the more 1937 it was, the more 2020 we would see in it. And or 2021 now. And I think that's true. I think that's happening.
And isn't it amazing that in 2019 we saw that happening, not knowing what the future was going to bring, even sadder and more disturbing events. But it was even true then. And now how it resonates in a very sad but yet very important way because of the changes that Black Lives Matter and the discussions people are having all over the country. I guess this play is of the moment, is what I'm trying to say. And I congratulate you on what you didn't know 3 years ago when you were writing this play. In a sense, you intuitively knew it. But so I really look forward to seeing this play explode across the universe so that many, 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 many people witness it. So.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Deborah, can you remind us when it opened at Studio Theater? Was that in June?
Yes, it opened on July 3rd. July 2nd at Florida Studio Theater, and it runs there through August 15th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
6-week run.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. Will you go back down, or are you done going down that part of the country?
No, I won't be able to go back down, but they're doing lots of great public forums and discussions, and Raymond Arsenault, who wrote the definitive book on the Lincoln Memorial Concert, is traveling down there to lead forums.
Oh,
and
great.
A great deal. They've got civil rights leaders from Florida who are coming in, and they're getting a lot of real interest in the community to engage the issues of the play. So I'm really thrilled by that.
I have to say, for me personally, and you know this from the research that we were doing up in Princeton and everything, it was one of those in-depth director research with our design team to be able to visit Princeton and to be able to put our hands on the Einstein artifacts and listen to Marian Anderson's. Somebody gave me a whole box of 75 LPs, to listen to. 75 are, the speed 75, for me, it was really one of those research experiences we could never get enough of, who these real characters were. And I can only imagine that as it gets further and further out there in the academic world, that universities will be responding to this play, whether they start teaching it, reading it, and as many universities will start to produce it when it's available for university rights. I can just imagine that this play is going to have a long academic life also, in addition to the professional theater.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because there's a comment in the chat that I just wanted to share with you, Deborah, particularly, that says, this play was my catalyst to be more honest history, to be more aware of what I don't know. So that is exactly what we want plays to do, right? That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And then someone else is saying they're really looking forward to seeing you in DC this fall. They saw the play here and they can't wait to see it there.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you all too. Hopefully I can be there when the CATF bus rolls up. But Deborah, I really appreciate your comment, because I think that, the need for honest history is now a national conversation, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
Even if we take a look at just the issue of the Confederate soldier monuments, for example, like, or this critical race theory stuff that's happening. It's all about taking a look at honest history. So hopefully, another reason actually why I wanted to. I really wanted to sort of honor a lot of the historical accuracy. Obviously, when you're working with a play, you have to, scudge a few things. But I felt like the core of it had to be true if it was going to have any validity in this conversation. And anyway,
well, I think what you're saying is it verges on profound, because you typically write historical plays. You have an interest in writing plays about period, two stories, period, and to see you continue and to have such a rich, authentic historical play as I think teaches all of us that history, we can't forget yesterday, and we have to speak the truth of history, not the history that was taught in classrooms. And how many more people will know Mary Church Terrell because of this play and the work that you're doing. And so, Peggy, I don't know if I can jump into the future here, or because I don't want to stop any conversation about My Lord, What a Night, as long as we have Deborah here. But I was wondering if it would be, would you like to share maybe some ideas that you have about some of the future projects that are rattling around in your brain, in your imagination, in your passion? What are you passionate about writing next?
Wow, I'm oh my goodness, actually quite a lot. The pandemic was excuse me. I had a number of commissions during the pandemic, so I am coming out of an intense writing period. I'm very passionate about The Knock, which is an opera about military wives, which could not, because of COVID restrictions, be staged at Glimmerglass. So it's being made as a live action movie. And Cincinnati Opera will pick it up and stage it next summer. So it'll have a stage premiere there. But I'm in rehearsals for that. And I just have to say, we have a sudden extreme thunderstorm. So if you lose me, that's why.
Okay. We're well used to that in our country here.
It just came up all of a sudden. So that is a play that it is inspired by an experience that I had in Norfolk, Virginia, where I wrote a play about military spouses and was told certain stories, and then I took one of those stories and turned it into an opera. I'm working a lot in opera. I'm working with Cincinnati Opera on a grand opera with Shona Pebolo, who's a Nigerian American composer. called The Dowry, and it's a big opera that basically is rooted in the African American experience, and also includes a Nigerian component. I am going into rehearsals for another opera called Kwamino's Map in Chicago at the Chicago Opera Theater. And this is based on a little known piece of history, which I'll just share briefly. It's something I didn't know and is not documented in our history books. Back to Deborah's comment, we need to know what our history was. The Revolutionary War was basically the largest slave uprising in United States history. The British offered freedom to any person enslaved if they would fight for the British against the colonists. And this is a well-known fact in England because many of these folks, when the Brits lost the war, ended up over in London, where there's the whole community. Between 20,000 and 100,000 enslaved people fought against the colonists for the British and then landed in London, Nova Scotia, and in other British colonies. And there's the first book on the subject was written in 2019 in the United States, although it's well documented in England. And so I was commissioned to write this with a British Belizean composer and in collaboration with a historian over there. And we're telling the story of the folks that landed in London and what that experience was.
That's
so
fascinating. Wow.
it's fascinating. It's a fascinating thing. We had to buy all the research materials from England because they're not available over here. And again, I became aware of like how much what we consider to be the historical record is simply what whoever's writing it decides it's going to be, not necessarily what it was. So, I'm working on that, and so those are my opera projects. And I just finished a new play called The Drolls, which is set in Puritan England, and it's
my
it's
favorite
like
villains are the Puritans.
Yes. Well, they closed the theaters. They burned Shakespeare's Globe to the ground.
Oh,
and it's about the drolls who were the unemployed actors who took to the streets performing comedy routines to support themselves and ended up actually saving Shakespeare from the dustbin of history. So I did that.
And then you've already written this play?
I've written this play. Florida Studio Theater commissioned it. So I'm going into workshops on that. And I wrote two plays.
You a Rolling World premiere talk. Please keep CATF in mind. See if you pitched me that idea, I would have commissioned that on the spot. So, so when it's appropriate, know that you have people up here that would like to read that play. So,
that'd be great.
Yeah, that's great.
So during the pandemic, I wrote 4 operas and 2 plays. And I blew a gasket. I don't have you asked me what am I thinking about? Nothing.
Take a break. Yeah.
The well is dry.
Take a break. Those are, I mean, again, the history, I really salute you and applaud you for being so passionate about untold stories. The world needs them. We need them. I'm passionate about telling them. So keep doing it. That's great.
Yes, and Deborah, someone dropped in the chat, if you haven't a chance to see it, that I wonder if Andrew teaches history, but he actually talks about this and the British and what would have happened if the British had won, and some other references to the Declaration of Independence. Oh yes, I'm a history professor. All right. Good. Do we know that?
Well, yeah, Andrew, I see that you mentioned Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson in his works says that there were 30,000 enslaved people in Virginia alone who fought for the British. George Washington created what is called the Book of Negroes at the end of the war, and there's 20,000 there. And what's so interesting about this little unknown fact of history is that it's right there in the historical record in plain sight. And yet it's been conveniently passed over. And Andrew, I'd be very happy to give you some source material on this if you're interested. It's a pretty cool, really interesting subject.
It sounds like you've just, I'm reading these chats now too, which I never do, Peggy, and I'm reading them. It sounds like you and Andrew have now hit it off as colleagues, history colleagues. Good. Peggy, what am I leaving out? How do we, yeah.
You know, I wanted to ask, Deborah, if you would talk a little bit about the process and what it's like to actually write an opera when you're doing the words with someone who's doing the music, and are there places in that process where you struggle to connect, or are you pretty fortunate in your experiences that you've been able to find a common language to tell the story? But it's got to be a very different process than sitting down and writing a play on your own, right?
Yeah, it really is, because the process with opera is that you do a very detailed and deep outline and treatment. And in fact, that's where the hard work is. And that is what takes a long time. You will spend 6 months on an outline and 4 weeks on the libretto. And the reason for it is because opera is first and foremost, you could say the same for theater, but it's first and foremost architectural. You have to understand musical structure, and you have to create basically an architecture or a skeleton upon which a large scale musical composition can take place, where the music is the driver, and you have to do it extremely economically. So I collaborate a lot with different composers, and the treatment stage is endless. I mean, you would never do this with a play. You would never outline like this with a play, because you want to be exploring, but you outline within an inch of your life. And then you turn it over, and then the composer comes back. And in the opera, you only get one rewrite, so you have to sort of turn it in at a pretty high level pretty quickly. You do get a workshop, but once the musical forces are unleashed, because they're so extensive and so expensive, the music sort of takes over. And so your ability to collaborate and your ability to sort of communicate well with your collaborator is fundamental to having a successful project. And I've been very blessed that I've worked with really terrific composers, and they've all been pretty successful. But the other thing too is it's incredibly economical. You the writer have to realize that you are not in the driver's seat in the same way that you are with a play. That you have to understand music enough so that music can drive it, but you have to also know when to throw the ball to the composer and let the composer run, because a music well done can tell story even more economically than words. So it's I mean, it's like it's a very almost arcane skill set, I have to say. But I really enjoy working in the opera, because I get to work on a very large scale. I mean, the grand opera that I'm working on now, we're going to have an orchestra of 65, a chorus of 36, 10 principals. I mean, you get it's a forum for really big ideas, and they give you the means to do it. So I'm kind of hooked on it. It's really fun.
I have one more question about opera, and then we'll stop indulging my question. So I think it's really fascinating to talk about the new operas in the same way that we talk about new plays, right? Because opera has been, similarly when you think about Shakespeare, moving back, but opera has had such a traditional sort of perception in, I think, the viewer, the audience's mind for a long time. And then you see these new operas coming along, and I feel like it really has changed the opera performance, right? I worked on a couple of new operas a long time ago in San Francisco when things like the opera of Dead Man Walking was coming out. And it was such a sort of shock to the audience system. What's the new opera world like now? Do you feel like there's a lot of interest in developing new operas? Because the new play world has grown significantly over the years.
Yeah. Well, I would say the opera's where it's happening right now. It's there's been a perfect storm of a number of things that have taken place in the last 10 years. And opera companies, basically a lot of their older audience that likes what we call the old park and bark operas, you know, those old European things, those audiences are dying out, and young people seem to be taking to opera. Who knew, right? And those opera companies that are doing a lot of new work are the ones that are actually flourishing and doing well. Surprisingly enough. The opera is incredibly open to women. They're open to BIPOC writers. They fund you generously. I mean, you can make a living as an opera librettist. Whereas you can't really make a living as a playwright all the time. And there's a real openness to sort of cracking open the musical styles of opera. So people are not doing imitative old European park and bark stuff. There's jazz and blues infused and all kinds of work happening. And this happens in every art form where suddenly you hit a period and there's this great flourishing, and then once something starts and everybody wants to be there, and then it flourishes some more. And that's kind of what's happening in the opera right now. It's really exciting place to be, and the new work is really terrific. And it's contemporary. They want contemporary stories. And in the opera, the librettist was never really important. It was always about the composer, and they would shoehorn words into the operas, and the librettos for those old operas are dreadful. They're badly written. Well, now audiences want stories. And so suddenly the opera needs playwrights, because playwrights can dramatize, they can tell a story, they can create a compelling character, we can do it economically, we know dramatic structure. And so the librettist is suddenly very important in the opera when before it hadn't been. So I feel very lucky to have hit the opera just at the moment when all of this stuff was happening. And I was I'm in the first wave, if you will. And it's a really exciting place to be.
And it's very hopeful to hear you say that. I mean, it gives me tremendous hope to hear how excited and passionate you are about the form, and to know that this isn't just a fluke. This is going to now take off and grow, and as it has been. Even with contemporary music, contemporary opera, contemporary theater.
Yeah.
Audiences are hungry for a story. I really believe what you say is true.
Mm-hmm.
So
great. I asked Mark Skorka, who's the head of Opera America. He's sort of like Opera America is like the TCG of opera companies. And I said to him, this makes no sense to me why young people are taking to opera. Why do you think that's happening? And he held up his cell phone. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, I think that because we spend so much time on these little screens, and kids spend so much time on these little screens, that they hunger for something with dimension. They hunger for something with scale. This is
spectacle, right?
Spectacle. Yeah. This is as small as you can get, and opera is as big as you can get. And so they want the big, they want the spectacle, they want the music and the poetry and the, and that made sense to me, that he thinks it's sort of a backlash to our life on screen.
That's great. And I think what will be really interesting to watch is how they can provide a more accessible entrance point for people to see opera.
Yes.
So it's more equitable, more affordable, because, it's as you said, it's tremendously expensive to produce. So the challenge is, how can we make it available to all people, and because I think people are going to be just what you said. They want that spectacle. They want that big story. I think, and you said it earlier, they want big ideas.
Yes.
Big ideas deserve spectacle and a platform, but big ideas and spectacle cost money. So how are we going to and I think there's a solution to it, but it's a great challenge, and it would be a great way to get people in the door to see live to see live art again being performed.
Yeah, opera's got to get over that elitist thing that got put on it.
We all have to get over elitist. Yeah, we try
Yeah.
very hard. We
Yeah.
try very hard, as you know, at this festival, but we're still constantly, people consider us elitist.
Sure.
Even doing the kinds of down and dirty plays we do, people still consider it elitist. So artists in general have to continue to find a way to reach out to the common and the everyday people in our world, so that it's accessible to everybody.
We have to be like Shakespeare. We have to play to the queen and the groundlings and everybody.
It's a great analogy. Why do we forget that? You know, and why do we let people push us into that boat where it's elitist? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention again that there are some comments in the chat, one of which is, you know, the idea of opera has been, and they have really been trying to figure out how to get young people. And we hear it in the theater all the time, right? You hear it in museums. And so it is exciting to think that there is going to be a path forward of getting young people involved in the arts in another way.
And it's exciting to think that opera is going to lead that way, which
I know.
I couldn't have predicted that. So Deborah, now I can add pioneer to my list of adjectives to describe you. You know, way to go.
So Ed, should we see if we have any questions?
Oh my goodness, I forgot we had an audience out there. I thought this was a private conversation.
They've been really good about putting things in the chat. And one of the questions has been is, will this be available for other folks to watch who could attend tonight? And I think we can make this available on YouTube. Is that right? Either Gabby, Trent, someone give me a thumbs up about that. But I'm sure.
For that question, yeah.
Yes, I'm sure we can make it available, and we'll let you know. We'll drop that in the chat, how we might do that. So are there any questions from our audience? If you want to drop any further ideas or thoughts or questions for Deborah in the chat or in the Q&A before we continue with some of our questions. Do I see anything? Or comments, if you have comments about the conversation so far. I know you've been doing that as we go, but you might have something else to share. Oh, I see something in the Q&A. Let's see what that says. Yes, I have one. Do you want to type it out? Is that Gil? Did I see there? Can we unmute Gil Garcia? One of you two? Maybe we can do that.
Yeah, so I've gone ahead and give Gil permission to speak. So go ahead if you have your question.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an absolutely wonderful and engaging and very sophisticated conversation. And I thank CATF and I thank the featured artist. It's just fabulous. So my question is, if you were to write an opera or a play featuring a 21st century scenario, specifically a scenario during the month of July of 2021, what might be your focus?
Well, I'm working on one right now, and it's I'm telling a story called The Dowry that takes a look at an affluent African-American family. And it's sort of like a contemporary King Lear, where the father has pulled himself out of poverty, out of the Jim Crow South, if you will, to get to the upper echelons of society, and who then becomes a successful businessman and engages in a real estate redevelopment program that will actually gentrify a Black neighborhood and destroy the community that he came from. And he has a son raised in affluence at Yale, who begins to do things like take Black studies classes and hip hop and rap, and sends his father into orbit. And it's about the tensions within Black families, about the different strategies for succeeding and making it in American society. Now I'm writing, and it's set today. I'm writing this because I'm working with a composer whose story this is. And I'm working with actually a Black composer who is a Republican. And, or let me say this, he was a Republican. And he wanted to explore what was it within the sort of recipe for success that he had and that many successful Black folks have. What is it that makes them and made him suddenly take positions and do things that became unsupportive of their own communities? And so it's sort of a deep psychological study of that dynamic within certain Black families. So that's what the opera is about, and it's set now. And so I'm writing that now.
Did you tell us the name of the composer? Are you able to tell us who that is?
Sean O'Peblo.
Sean.
He's a sort of rising star in the classical world, and so that's our opera. So that's now. Let me see what else today. I'm mulling around another story called The Kettle that's inspired by something I read in the New York Times about this Jewish family that opened the mail one day, and the kettle that their grandmother used to use in Germany had been returned to them after it had been stolen by the Nazis, and after the grandmother had been murdered in Auschwitz. And I'm trying to devise a story about an object, an everyday object that obviously, and what was so powerful about this article, and also about other stuff that I know is from other experiences, is how objects carry memory and history and are incredibly powerful. And I'm now devising a scenario where the person who sends the kettle back is someone who also has a relationship to that kettle that's very personal and is rooted in their grandfather, who was a Nazi who murdered the grandmother and stole the kettle.
Oh my goodness.
So I want, and so I want this, and that's the bit. I should never talk about my ideas before they're fully formed, but that's the general picture, and I'm working that out. But there's something about the way that history is carried in objects. And I think that we don't understand the power of objects in America because we have too many objects. I think when you live in a world where you have few objects, you understand their importance. They carry more weight. But I think that, having just recently lost my father, to understand the power of an object can suddenly bring him back to life and can suddenly reawaken memories I didn't know I had. And so I think it's an interesting way. I guess, Ed, you're right. It's always goes back to history for me. I didn't know I was a historian, but I think objects carry things. I think they carry history. And
the quote of the night is objects carry memory and history. I'm writing it down. I think this made the entire conversation important. Going all the way back to when we went into Einstein's archives and all those kinds of objects that they had. But that is such a special and authentic quote. Objects carry memory and history.
And I think they also carry responsibility. It's like, if you are holding the kettle that your grandfather made you your hot chocolate in, and then you realize your grandfather was a Nazi murderer, then you have to make reparations, right? You have a responsibility.
It's a great rabbit hole you're going down. This is, you go down there. A storyteller and a historian.
Yeah.
And you have already inspired some other people's memory association with objects in the chat too, just by that comment.
I love it. I love it.
I also wanted to go back to the opera that you're writing too, because the other thing that seems very exciting about this opera is the opportunity for singers, right? For Black singers to be principal singers and to be showcased in that way, and for Black audiences to have their own story to see. And so this seems like a potentially very powerful piece in the time that we're living in, as those concentric circles of impact move to the artists involved, to the audiences involved. So that's pretty exciting.
And you know, Peggy, I just want to say, in terms of Deborah, this is the work she's been doing all along. This hasn't started new because of current events. The current events only support the passion and commitment of the storytelling and historical perspective Deborah's plays have played. And it's just a real tribute to your intuition, Deborah, to intuitively know what to write about now and what's important. But it's been what you've been doing in your career. So you should be applauded for that. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. But Peggy, to your comment, absolutely, because there's a problem in the opera. They have a bigger problem than the theater does, and that is it's called the Porgy and Bess ghetto. If you were a Black opera singer, you spend your entire career doing nothing but Porgy and Bess. And so now they're refusing to do Porgy and Bess. And in the case of Cincinnati, their singers, their Porgy and Bess cast came to them and said, why can't Black Americans have grand operas just like Puccini? We want grand operas. And so Cincinnati Opera, to their credit, said, all right, we're going to commission 3 grand operas about Black themes from Black composers. And
that's great.
So it to address the very thing you mentioned, Peggy, about, you know, singers needing more material to sing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great, Peggy, fascinating conversation tonight, what we learned. I hope our viewers are, obviously with the chat that they're doing, this is rich material.
Yes. And so I saw Deborah sneak in a bite of dinner. We're getting to that point where we have to wrap up our hour. So I just want to ask if anybody else has any last questions or comments that they want to share before we close out our conversation and let people really finish their dinner. Anybody
well, I
have any
ordered
last?
Chinese. I was told to order takeout. So I live in a rural area and I have Chinese and pizza, so I'm having Chinese.
Excellent. Thank you for participating in our takeout. I don't see any other. We have a fantastically rich and enlightening program. Thank you, Deborah. So lots of
that's great.
love in the chat. Lots of love in the chat.
And as we remind everybody, Peggy, that this Friday is the House of the Negro Insane, our next audio drama. So people should be aware of that. And
another opportunity to talk to a playwright, because Terrence will be joining us afterwards.
From San Francisco. We're taking the risk of flying Terrence Anthony in from San Francisco.
It's a secret.
It's a secret. Okay.
All of you participants, the 26 of you, don't tell anybody that Terrence Anthony will be here in person.
That's a secret.
Okay. It's a secret until Friday.
Do come. Okay. And I'm also looking forward, Deborah, we're looking forward to being back in 2022 with the 6-play rotating repertory that we announced in 2019. So we never canceled. I know a lot of people said CATF. No, we postponed, and we are coming back to those same 6 playwrights and their plays, and we're going to share them with our audience live. Indoors, in a theater, in 3 different theaters. If all goes well. So everybody be safe out there, wear your mask, get vaccinated, please take care of one another. Deborah, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Deborah. I'm wondering if we can unmute everybody and do a loud round of applause for Deborah. Is that possible, Trent? I don't know. May not be. But thank you.
In my ears, I hear everybody applauding all over the country. Okay.
That's right.
It
Thank
sounds
you,
like the same
Deborah.
weekend. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all of everyone for joining us tonight. It was really wonderful to share dinner and to do Takeout and Talk. And hopefully we'll continue more conversations as CATF moves forward, whether it's online or live. We're going to be talking to you about art and new plays. So thank you all, and thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.